Three individuals have had a disagreement, and in the pirate city of Limsa, these problems are only solved in one way: competition. The three offended persons stepped forward. Rogadin, Makote, and Lalafell were each observing one another with nothing but contempt as their spiteful gazes would dart between the other two. But soon, all was silent as the judge of this entire affair stepped forward. The judge decreed that all in this competition was fair, and that skill alone would decide the winner. The judge raised their hand, making the three and all those gathered to watch tense up. Finally, the judge shouted for them to begin, making the three rush to the workstations that had been set up for them, as all three chefs began to cook. Each of them began to display a variety of techniques that have been honed to a razor's edge over their careers. The Makote, with her superb reflexes, chopped, balanced, and sizzled her ingredients with perfect care. Meanwhile, the Rogadin grabbed what looked like a fire shard from one of the nearby bags before crushing it in his grasp. He smiled before sprinkling the fire powder over his pan, causing it to briefly erupt in flame. Lastly, the Lalafell had something else in mind. As she prepared her ingredients, she wove a spell, and bursting forth from the aether came a carbuncle, which took a whisk into its mouth and began to mix the Lalafell's ingredients for her. The Makote pointed at the cooking carbuncle and shouted foul play, but the judge shook their head and allowed the carbuncle to continue. Eventually, all three chefs finished their preparations, and a full 3-course meal was on display for all to see. Everyone, including the chefs, stood silent as the judge paced to each table, sampling every appetizer, main course, and dessert with a trained expression. Eventually, the moment of truth came as the judge raised their hand, declaring this would be a 3-way victory and loss. The Makote had produced the finest appetizer, which stimulated the appetite and excited the taste buds. However, the Rogadin's main course was everything one should expect from a proper meal. Meanwhile, the dessert presented by the Lalafell and her carbuncle was rich yet easy on the stomach. Begrudgingly, the chefs gave in to the judge's appraisal, and a new 3-course meal combining their talents was added to Limsa's menu. It would become known as the Warring Terzetto, and became a favorite for all those visiting the city-state for years to come. Good day, my friends! Continuing our lessons on Eorzea's most refined crafters, we come to a discipline that is in a league all its own. While most crafters deal with materials and items meant to be worn or wielded, this one deals only in objects that are meant to be eaten. Indeed, let us come together and partake of the world's delicacies as we understand what it means to be a culinarian. In the history of the entire world, things like the Culinarians Guild are considered really young. However, the practice of cooking and preparing food has been around for as long as can be remembered. Through every astral era and umbral calamity, there's always been the need to sustain one's life through sustenance. You see, food serves two purposes. One is the biological need. As living creatures, our organic makeup demands a variety of proteins, vitamins, and chemicals in order to stay healthy and strong. This is why different kinds of fruits, vegetables, meats, and more are commonplace across every culture, regardless of location. The second purpose food serves is to speed up the process of recovering one's missing aether. You see, physical exhaustion occurs when one's body becomes tired from extensive use, but someone's personal pool of aether can be spent as well. The easiest example of this are mages. While there are a variety of ways to cast spells, all of them demand a cost on the caster's body at some point. So long as they're practicing safe methods of spellcraft, a mage's aether will recover over time. However, the right food can speed up this process profoundly. After all, food, like everything else in our world, is ultimately made of aether. So what better way to recover the energy you're missing than by devouring it? Eating the right food can energize your body and your aether in strange yet interesting ways. That being said, food and the various ways it has been prepared have been celebrated across multiple cultures, generations, and continents. Which brings us to the modern chef, or rather, the Yorzian Culinarian. Today, Aldenard's passion for all things cooking is easily traced back to Limsa. While every country has its own culture when it comes to food, it was Limsa that took the idea of feasting to an entirely new level and has yet to stop. But to understand why, we need to turn back the clock a little more than 50 years ago. At this time, the Admiral of Limsa was a man named Gulskif Baldwanson. But he was more infamously known as Mast Cleaver Baldwanson. Despite his vicious reputation, this Rogadan fancied himself a connoisseur of all things food. There are many stories of him sailing with his crew to try and catalog every recipe known to our realm. To him, rare ingredients and new recipes were as good as any treasure, and you could consider your mast cleaved if you got in his way. You wouldn't expect a pirate to fall so deeply in love with the culinary arts, especially with all the stories of sailors losing their teeth in fights, as well as the infamous cases of scurvy. And yet, Baldwanson was a true gourmand, worthy of the title, as he learned to cook every dish he discovered, and even perfected some of his own recipes. His love for the art of cooking was as vast as the sea itself, so in order to immortalize his findings and hand the torch to the next generation of chefs, Admiral Baldwanson declared that Limsa shall create the Culinarians Guild. In the year 1525 of the Sixth Astral Era, the guild was officially opened, and has kept Baldwanson's passion alive ever since. Ever since its creation, the Culinarians Guild has attempted to expand on the old Admiral's vision by not only perfecting the recipes of Eorzea, but by trying to collect and catalog the various dishes across the entire world. From beverages to pastries, surf to turf, noodles and more, almost any kind of dish you can imagine has been practiced in these halls. In fact, many cooking techniques passed down through the Guild's teachings were created by the Admiral himself. So it could be said that any member of the Guild is truly following in the Admiral's footsteps. Though despite his passion and love for cooking, he isn't all the Guild would eventually become known for. Using perfected cooking techniques as well as experimental recipes, the Guild has ever tried to push the bounds of culinary expertise. To that end, they've created many dishes and meals unique to the Guild itself, such as the infamous eggless omelette. But the Guild has never simply created new meals for its own sake. Attached to the Guild Hall is a restaurant named the Bismarck, and it has always acted as the best way for everyone to partake of the latest and greatest discoveries of the Guild. In fact, the Bismarck is so refined that some food critics have stated that it is the only restaurant worthy of the name. And strangely enough, this statement isn't entirely hyperbolic. The Bismarck is so popular that people have traveled across the sea from other countries just to sit and dine here. In fact, my records show that the waiting list for the Bismarck has never been less than at least 3 whole months, with there only ever being vacancies for friends, family, and of course, VIPs. While the Guild and the Bismarck are indeed famous in the culinary field, the culinarians belonging to it rarely stay in Limsa forever. It's all too common for them to strike out on their own and travel the world in hopes of perfecting their own style of cooking. Many guild members have gone to other countries and continents in this noble pursuit. Of course, these trained chefs usually return at some point in order to share what they've learned and perhaps show off a new recipe or two. But some cooks have been known to stay abroad for long periods of time, helping to improve the tastes of people across the world. Given enough time, it's likely that the Culinarians Guild may have a direct or indirect connection to every major civilization at some point because of this worldly endeavor. But now that we've covered the history of the Guild and its origins, let us go over their choice of tools and attire. Your average traveling culinarian will always have 2 specific tools with them. The first is their frying pan, or skillet. While not a big boiling pot, A chef's pan is one of their most used tools, as it serves to heat up and prepare whatever recipe they're working on. Over the course of its career, a culinarian's pan will prepare all sorts of unique dishes. The offhanded tool these chefs are almost never seen without is a trusty knife. While knives are technically an edged weapon with a storied history all its own, a chef's knife is something special. These blades are designed specifically to cut through scores of fruits, vegetables, meats, cheeses, and fish over and over again without dulling unnecessarily. In fact, these knives are sometimes made with the same rare metals that go into making legendary weapons. Next, we'll go over their attire. While a culinarian's getup is usually up to them, there are a few things all the greatest outfits have in common. First and foremost is their apron. Cooking can be a messy job, and instead of ruining countless wardrobes, most culinarians wear a stylish yet easy to clean outfit with a large apron. These outfits usually come equipped with a pair of thick gloves for handling hot items, but are easily removable since thick gloves aren't always necessary. Lastly is the tall hat from which many chefs are known for. These hats are almost always white, to signify a sense of purity and cleanliness within one's kitchen. A clean hat asserts that they are indeed a clean chef. And to wrap up our lesson on this discipline, we'll discuss the use of the crystals they're most known for acquiring. Culinarians make use of two elemental crystals more than any other: fire and water. Fire is extremely reasonable, as heat is an element of change. Nothing comes out of fire exactly the same as it went in, and a chef's ingredients becoming a meal is no different. Secondly, they make use of water crystals. The water from these crystals is used to clean and purify all sorts of ingredients, as well as become an ingredient itself in countless recipes. As such, culinarians make use of fire and water crystals extremely regularly. And that, my friends, is all I have to say on the history and practices of the Culinarians. Could I have explained the various meals and methods the guild has developed over the years? Yes, but then we'd be here all month. So instead of my words, I invite you to visit or even join the guild itself, so you can taste its history for yourself. And if you are already a seasoned practitioner of this respectable craft, know that I'd be eager to sample your greatest work sometime. Till then, stay safe, my friends. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Big shout out to my patrons: Rovakis, Potato, Runeteer, The Yellow Couch, Papaya, Cyan, Sage Mouse, and Volvalis Oma. If you want to see more lore content in the future, share this with your friends. My dream is to share as much as I find with as many people as possible. And if you do end up helping me, thank you so much in advance. And have a wonderful day.